Yeah, interestingly enough, there's no single folk song in the piece. What we do have is a lot of reference to folk styles from the world over. Probably most significantly from the beginning is joropo from Venezuela, my home country. It's this style, it's very energetic, it's in 3, and it has this constant rhythmic drive of the maracas, these shakers. Just like, it was a little bit like this. And we also see different inspirations. There's a bit of this West African influence in the balafon, which it's more of a consequence of the instrument itself because it's just such a rich playing tradition, aside from the richness of the instrument, that you always end up taking and sort of drawing inspiration from these polyrhythms. Of course, I always do my best to make reference and note the achievements of the Mandinka people that helped influence this piece. And we also see a bit of a Cuban influence, this Afro-Cuban element in the style of singing with a da 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 da. It's no specific folk melody, but it certainly is something that I at least grew up hearing. My father is Cuban, actually, so yeah. There's things that come easier and things that come more difficultly, especially with Konstantyn, funnily enough. He's an amazing, amazing percussion player, but because of that, he's always pushing you and telling you, write something really hard for me. I want to play 7 instruments at the same time. I don't know if I ever got to 7 at the piece, but it certainly was a challenge to come up with these fun little musical puzzles for him to figure out and for the ensemble to play as well. You know, balancing what might be musically natural and as far as we can push it, you know, making something that's energetic, special, but also communicates meaning and isn't just there for difficulty. So I feel that was a challenge, and also the length. The length of the piece itself was something that was a little daunting to me at first because I haven't written a piece this long since the first composition I made when I was 15, which I don't think really counts. It was more 100 little pieces put together. So this opportunity and this concerto really is something that is special, if anything, because of the challenge of length. Of course, if I can continue on this, part of the ways that I worked around this was drawing inspiration from Cortazar's text that I mentioned earlier, or La Noche, Boca Arriba, which itself is, when I read it out loud as sort of preparation for this piece, it ended up being exactly 20 minutes. So what I did is that each of these sections, these changes that occur, are inspired by changes in section in the text. They don't follow the text exactly, but they do follow the pacing of the text, which I think is absolutely beautiful. Yeah, to begin with, I'm absolutely honored and flabbergasted, in a sense, to be included in this commission. It's such a wonderful opportunity, and to be asked to do something like this, at my age especially, I'm truly, truly humbled. In the production process, there were many challenges that came up with this as well, because of the magnitude of the project and the amount of musicians involved. You know, it involved essentially reconfiguring how I composed a bit. For instance, this is probably the first piece where I had one instrumental part finished before all the rest, and that was the percussion. And that was a bit of a challenge, nonetheless, and making sure that everybody had everything they needed on time and that everything was done as cleanly as possible, you know? And this is going along also as well with the initial barriers of like, it's crazy, you know? I remember feeling a little bit like, wow, this is so special. It almost feels like it could disappear in a moment. But in a way that became a sort of inspiration for the piece, because it's an encouragement to work and see if I can really put what I want to put on the page and do something truly special. And I think we achieved it, Konstantyn. Yes, it is my first concerto, and in a sense, it's probably my first serious piece that's this long and of this magnitude. I think my first serious piece for 15 musicians. What I would say is also new, you know, maybe an approach, is this sort of working with the text. I've always been mesmerized with this idea of invisible countries and worlds. You know, as somebody who grew up outside of the country where I was born, I had a deep connection with folkloric elements, but I never experienced them directly, you know, in a lot of cases, because there was a lot I hadn't seen But in my mind, I would always paste it together from the memories I did have. And that's why I refer to this invisible or imagined homeland. And in a way, the way I wrote this piece really draws from that idea. So this question of, also inspired by Cortazar's text, which is about a man who gets in a motorcycle accident and begins having dreams that he's an Aztec warrior being chased by his enemies and getting sacrificed. There are a series of dreams. And in the last dream, right before he dies, he realizes that the dream was reality all along. So it becomes this ambiguous question of whether the real world was the real world or the dream was the real world. So that sort of pushed me to orchestrate and write in this way, where the idea is to create unique sound worlds that are distinct from one another, but begin to bleed into each other as we go on. And there comes this doubt of which one was the first, which one was meant to be. That was a bit new for me. It's brought a lot of learning, honestly, just a lot of opportunities to connect and meet new musicians in the production process, to gain more experience working with large ensembles and players, especially large ensembles that are really motivated to work with a composer. I can say very happily and very thankfully that Ereprijs is an extremely didactic and friendly ensemble for new music and composers. Yes, that has been a big part that I've gained and learned throughout this process. Also, personal things, investigations, looking into the balafon as an instrument, learning about these traditions, and also learning about the ways that this can be adapted for Western musicians. It was a big learning process, a lot of experimentation, working with odd sounds, trying to get a brass section to sing through their instruments and kind of understand the vowels is a challenge. But yes, there's been a lot to learn and to gain from this project, absolutely, be it contacts, opportunities, and also just personal growth. I would like to add that this piece is possible and it's an homage, again, to these traditions that we see around the world. I'd like to bring attention a bit to the situation in my home country, Venezuela, and also note that this is a piece, sort of made in a context of Konstantyn himself. I believe he's Ukrainian, right? And so this element of this piece, it's a sort of subtext that was going on in the process, but I do think it influenced. And I would like to use this opportunity to talk about these crises and to raise attention and awareness for them, as well as the situations in Africa, especially West Africa and the Mandinka people, and also in Cuba, raise awareness that we are in an extreme position of privilege, and their cultural contribution has helped this project come along for sure, be it from Ukraine and Venezuela in the physical sense, and also in the musical sense. So yes, if I can use a brief moment to offer them a platform through this piece, then I would feel very honored and very thankful.